Well, in horse racing and in horse betting, this is the most wonderful time of the year. Even though it's late October, it's festive, a lot going on because it's Breeders' Cup week. So it's Breeders' Cup Friday and Saturday. And we've got an awesome crew here. So excited to be reunited with my team here, my Equibase team here. We're going to be taking a look at Breeders' Cup Friday and Saturday using Race Lens. And so let's just go around the room. Christina Blacker, FanDuel TV. She's at Del Mar this week, part of the official breakfast at the Breeders' Cup team. You've been watching them all week, and great insights. We're going to get some of those here in a little bit. Corey Patton, CEO, co-founder of Pramana Labs, which creates the stat lines you're going to hear a lot more about tonight. And then Scott Coles, of course, handicapper, professional contest player, best known for winning the NHC in 2019. So we want to get some of his insights as we dig into the card. 14 Breeders' Cup races coming up Friday and Saturday, 5 on Friday, 9 on Saturday. We're going to tackle some races each day. I mentioned the NHC, and I do also want to tell you now, if you ever want to make it to the National Horse Players Championships, it's possible. And Equibase is doing a special promotion this season where you can qualify for the NHC by playing a bunch of free contests. It's called the Race of the NHC contest. So if you're a Race Lens subscriber, you get free weekly contests. The top 2 each week qualify for the Race Lens Final 50. And there will be another contest. The top 2 from that Final 50 contest will then qualify for the NHC in 2025. So you just go to equibase.com/NHC. And one more PSA before we get started here, because we do want to jump into the handicapping. Just want to remind you that if you want to get a taste of some of the tools that we're going to be talking about during this show, Equibase and Race Lens subscriptions right now are 30% off for Breeders' Cup week. All you got to do is add whatever subscription you'd like to your cart and use that promo code EQBBC30. So that's your promo code. We'll come back to it at the end of the show, but let's dive in. It's sort of impolite for the host to jump in and do the first race, but I'm going to do it. That's just the order that we got. So we're jumping into the Juvenile Fillies turf. It's race 8 on Friday. And for starters, I'll just say this is the one turf race where you're really going to look to beat the European horses. Americans have won 13 of the last 16 runnings of this race in particular. We're on the 13 horse, who's my top pick. But if we click the 1 horse for a moment, that's going to be your favorite in this race, Lake Victoria, trained by Aidan O'Brien, ridden by Ryan Moore. Horse picked up the rail draw, will be coming out of post 1. I think she could be up against it here because she's got speed, but she's been running a lot of races with straightaways in Europe, and it's a little different when you're down on the rail and you've got a dozen horses to your outside coming over on you. And so I'm going to take a shot against her. She's going to be a shorter price. And again, historically, this is a race that Europeans have not done as well in as far as the turf races go. So where I do go is the 13. Mark Casse won this race in 2015. He has 3 horses entered here. One of them is named Nitrogen, who's a speed horse. And you've got Lake Victoria there to the inside. So Nitrogen will be pressing Lake Victoria. And I think it's set up for a horse sort of mid-pack. And Vixen will probably be there. So in the Natal Stakes at Woodbine, she was wide throughout. She was sitting a couple of lengths off the pace, including Nitrogen. And she had to kind of grind down the top 2 runners. The track was speed favoring. Vixen got up and then kind of gave it up late. But a really impressive race, I thought, for her 3rd career start. And I thought she could improve off of that. And she's showing improvement from race to race. If you look at the Equibase speed figures here in the form, going up from race to race, 64, 71, 90. So another step up, and it puts her in that sort of stratosphere where you think she can win this race. I think she's headed in the right direction. I think she gets a great pace setup. Speaking of pace, we could go over to the True Odds page. There's no immediate speed drawn to the inside of Vixen, so I think she gets clear from the outside. And if you could here on Racelands, you could kind of just click out of the AE, the also eligible horses. And if you do that and you sort by speed, you could see that there are, a couple of horses here that are projected to be on the lead. Thought process, totally justified. Nitrogen, some of the horses that we mentioned. And then also Lake Victoria is going to be there in the mix, probably going to get squeezed back and is going to be in some trouble. But right off of them is Vixen. And so for that reason, you could sort of visualize Vixen, the 13. really getting just the sweet trip. So that's why I really, really love her in this spot, and you're getting a good price. Now, the master of this race is Chad Brown. He's won this race 6 times. 5 of the winners have come out of the Miss Grillo Stakes, like Hard to Justify did last year. And the 6 horse this year, Virgin Colada, same track, same path, Miss Grillo to this Juvenile Fillies turf. If we could briefly show the start of her last race, she's the 3 horse, and you'll see it's not really indicated in the notes, but she does sort of get impacted after the break. You'll see it's not anything catastrophic, but she ultimately takes back, loses some ground. So there she's the 3, a couple of horses coming over, squeezing her back. Okay, she's back there. All right. And she stays there for a good long while. If we could kind of skip ahead to, right about here, keep an eye. She's still back there. Keep your eye toward the front of the field here. She's going to start making her move, and you kind of have this weird situation that happens near the front of the pack, which will develop here momentarily. But again, you could also, if you could keep an eye at the same time at the 3 horse kind of making her move up the rail. So here comes this sort of bolting, right? 3 horses wiped out. And when that happens, the horse up front just basically is handed the race. It already had a couple length lead, has plenty in reserve, kicks away. But look who's coming here. Look who's coming on the outside. I just thought this move was really impressive. The 11 Corretto is another horse that I like, comes back in this race for Grand Motion. And Corretto had a nice trip too. And for Virgin Colada to get up and get past her for second, I thought was really impressive visually. Again, she'll need a little bit of pace to run into, but I think that move at least caught me visually for a horse who's still improving, still figuring things out. That was her 3rd career race. So I'm 13-6 in the Juvenile Fillies turf. And I think that's it for this one. Yeah, let me stop for now. I've given you my picks there, and I'll shut up for this race. And we'll move on to another Friday race, and I will gladly pass it on to Corey in this one. This is sort of the feature on Friday. It's the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and it's a couple of favorites in this race. You didn't go with the top choice. You didn't go with the second choice, Corey. You like Jonathan's Way, who happens to be the 3rd choice.
Yeah, I really do. I love this race. I love the Juvenile. Gosh, it's got a special place for me back even when I was living in California working for Merv Griffin when he won the Juvenile with Stevie Wonderboy a million years ago. So I love this race. I love the history of it. I think it sets up for all the excitement of the spring races that come up the following year. Last year we got together, we did this. It seems ridiculous considering the year he had, but I had fierceness and got $35 on the horse last year, right? That won the Juvenile, right? So it's kind of, you can find value in this race by seeing just these horses just improve so quickly. They change race to race so much that if you just find one and you can ride one on the way up, that's a good way to try to make some money. In this race, I really like Jonathan's Way, the number 5 horse at 92. I like that horse. I've liked that horse for a while. Since his maiden breaker, and then I had him on the weekly podcast in the Iroquois, and I'm going to follow him right back in the Juvenile. It's got the versatility. This horse is incredibly versatile, unlike some of the others in here who just have one style of running. This horse has won from dead last and on the lead in his 2 races, and encountered a ton of trouble in his first race. I think we're going to watch that right here. But you're going to see Jonathan's Way in this race just break, get all kinds of shuffled, unsettled, and Rosario doesn't panic. The horse doesn't panic. You're going to see him break there right towards the back of it in the red cap. Oh, just the 6 horse just kind of drops to the back. Rosario's trying to get him to settle down a bit. Doesn't ever panic. And, of course, that's why you got Rosario and Phil Bauer as the conditioner. They're always going to be well-conditioned, well-experienced horses. But you can watch this horse from that moment dead last in this first race to just pick up ground and watch him keep coming. Just keep coming on the outside. And Rosario's at this point just got his feet in the dash trying to hold it back. And this horse is just going to circle around every single horse in this race. And he's going to just pick up steam into the stretch. And, you know, the son of Vacoma is just going to show you that he's got a ton of talent at first asking, which I absolutely love. You see a lot of horses that would just kind of quit, would be green. The jockey kind of give up on him. But Rosario says, you know what? We're going to go, 4, 5, 6 wide here, and then just come running down the stretch with more, so much more. Almost didn't ask the horse. A couple of reins shaken, a couple of taps here and there, but could have won by even further after starting dead last. And that shows professionalism. I loved it. And he came right back after this race, took the lead in the Iroquois from the start without ever being asked, and won going away and could have won by even more than he ever did. So posting that 100 Equibase speed figure. So huge jump up there. The sire, Vekoma, of this horse was undefeated at 2 as well. This is his first crop, and the progeny are winning at 30% so far on dirt with a positive ROI, and they're hitting the board about 53% of the time. So they're running on the dirt surface right now. 55 of 104 starts by the offspring of Vekoma. As I mentioned, Bauer and Rosario, you love to see those conditions together. You love to see that those two team up together. They're hitting at 50% this year, 4 of 8. And these are all Pramana stat lines that our tool does for every track at every race at every track every day, including all of the Breeders' Cup races found at Equibase at the entries page. You can go and look them up each day. All time, Rosario and Bauer are 55% together on the dirt. They are 5 of 9, 56% together in route races on dirt, and 3 of 5, 60% together over the last 90 days. So they love to win, and they love to win together. Bauer this year is 24% on the year. Those numbers just continue to look good. And one thing that in here caught my eye, this horse has been training so consistently every 7 days, just 4-panel work, 5-panel work, 5-panel work, 4-panel work, just coming into this. And if you go back to that October 4th work at Churchill, he did a 47 flat. How unusually fast is that for Bauer? I did a little research with Pramana. He has, in his training career, Bauer has overseen 28,307 total workouts. 14,405 were 4 furlong works. 985 were 4 furlong 2-year-old works. Only 7 have ever been under 47 seconds flat. They were all maidens but 1. And only 6 were ever 47 flat on its own. None of them were stakes horses. So this horse is training well. This horse is just, doing it under his own power. If he wins, he'll be the only Ohio bred to ever win this race. But I think he might just put himself up there on the board and make history there. So I'm going with Jonathan's Way, and I've got all the stats to back me up, and we'll see how it all turns out. But I like him on top, and I'll give you one other in this race to watch. I do think, and it's not a secret, obviously, it's Bob Baffert. It's the number 7 Gaming at 8-1. And Baffert's won this thing 5 times. And anytime you give Baffert an 8-1 shot in a Breeders' Cup race, watch out, especially at Del Mar. The sire of Gaming, Game Winner, won this race. Also won the Del Mar Futurity like Gaming did. I just love the way that horse finished up in the Futurity. Had a really rough start to it. Was kind of just awkward climbing, not really looking like he loved the running. But then just came into the lane, switched leads late. Has a little bit more experience that he can gain even from the race, and then just pulled away. And I think he's going to get a lot from it. I think the stretch out won't be an issue. He's beaten Citizen Bull and Getaway Car that are also in here. 2 for 2 over the Del Mar surface means he loves it. The only thing I would be concerned about potentially is Pratt jumping off, but Irad Ortiz Jr. is a very suitable replacement, and he and Baffert win at 17%, so they can get it done together. But look, I'm looking for Jonathan's Way with a little bit of gaming underneath, and I'm going to try to beat East Avenue and Chancellor McPatrick, and that's going to make my regularly weekly podcast host, Ben Kudla, very disappointed because he's already gone out on a limb and said that Chancellor McPatrick is a future Hall of Famer. So I'm going to take a stand. That may not be the case, but he said that after 2 races. I'm going to play against him in this race. So, sorry, Ben.
Oh, he's falling in love, man. He's falling in love.
I'm telling you.
It's so easy to do.
We need Ben up here to make his case too. Where's Ben? Can we pop him in at some point?
Yeah, we should dial him in to let him give his case. Yeah. Quality horse, bold statement.
You can see here the screen has moved to Saturday. I just want to say, and Christina, you're first up Saturday in the Filly and Mare Sprint, which is race 4. But we had all that great data that Corey just shared, and I just wonder, are there things that you see visually, whether it be in the juvenile or any of the other 2-year-old races on Friday, since you're actually out there, you've been watching these horses on the track all week, is there anything visually that stood out to you with any of the 2-year-olds, good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, East Avenue looks like a Kentucky Derby winner, let alone a juvenile winner. And so as
you're falling in love with East Avenue now.
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to call him a Hall of Famer, I'm going to call the Derby winner 2025. Like, that is how good East Avenue looks. Now, look, he drew the rail, and I think that's really difficult for a young horse. He's been on the lead in his first 2 races just because he's been better than the competition. But to Corey's point, these are 2-year-olds, and they can jump up immensely at this time of year. So if you see something special in a young horse, and I think anybody that was at Saratoga the day Jonathan Zoe broke his maiden has come back and wants to pick that horse in the juvenile because you saw something special, and he's backed it up with the win last time out as well. So I couldn't talk you off him. I couldn't talk you off Chancer McPatrick, but East Avenue is not just the standout of Future Stars Friday, of the whole week. He is a showstopper.
Wow. And that breeding is insane. So yeah, has every right to be something special.
Yeah, and I talked to Brendan Walsh a little bit about him too, and was listening into his insights on a recent podcast, and he talked about the temptation to take that horse to Saratoga because, of course, you want to go in there and you want to show off what you have, right? You have this amazingly talented horse, but he also thought back to the time where he had Maxfield, and Maxfield followed a very similar path, and then they had to scratch him before the juvenile because he wasn't 100%. And he said, I had to hold myself back because I knew I had a horse that was capable of winning the juvenile, and I wanted to give him a really kind introduction to racing, and that's why he started at Ellis. Not because he didn't think he could go unleash him at Saratoga. He could have done that. So I think the control that he's shown with this talented horse is another layer of the whole story. Like, there's so much more to East Avenue, and maybe we'll see it on Saturday. Maybe it is in 2025, but I think there's a lot of talent. I think it's a good crop. I don't think it's too early to say. This is a really nice crop of 2-year-olds.
Well, I'm glad I asked that question. That's as strong an endorsement as I think I've ever heard from you. So
as Tom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The star of the weekend. I love it.
Right. So I'll jump into Saturday, and I'm going to start in the filly and mare sprint at the 7 furlong distance. And look, this is a race that in the last couple of years has really been Chad Brown's race, right? With Goodnight Olive the last few seasons. And he comes in, I think, equally as strong with Ways and Means. You can see in her form those last 3 victories. You can also see just reflected in her record at the distance. 7 furlongs absolutely is a specialty distance, and she does very well at the 7 furlongs. I think she also carves out her own best trip. If you look at her running lines, she can be on the lead if she needs to. I don't think she will with the presence of Society in this race, but she's very happy to stalk. I don't think we're going to get any rain, but she's a champion. She runs on the sloppy track. She runs on the fast track. So I've kind of gone back and forth. At the end of the day, it's going to be really hard to pick against Ways and Means, but Scylla really stands out to me in this race for Bill Mott. And I had the chance to see her when she was at Del Mar 2 starts back for the Clement Hirsch. And I've noticed this pattern in Bill Mott's horses where he ran them in consecutive races in a pretty tight frame from the summer into like a late summer race at Saratoga. And Scylla is an example of that. She ran August 3rd in the Clement Hirsch where she was second. And then she came back on quick rest in the Ballerina when he turned her back in distance to August 24th. She was second that day to Society. Society ran away with it. But if you look at her speed figures, I think in the context of a one-turn race, you see that Equibase figure up there. That is competitive with this group of horses. And now a horseman like Bill Mott, who obviously the end goal is the Breeders' Cup. The goal along the way may have been the Clement Hirsch, and maybe he turned her back to the Ballerina. But I think the time into the Breeders' Cup is what has enabled him to get her to 100%. If you look at Arthur's Ride, he's done the exact same thing. So I started to pull some numbers and some stats with him in these types of races, in grade 1 races, with that little bit of a break, with the freshening, with the time. And she's another one that has looked great, and she's, presenting herself well this week. You're getting 6 for 28, 61 to 180 days in grade 1 stakes races, 21% of the time. And these are good horses that we see, come back in Breeders' Cup races, like Elite Power, like Cody's Wish. I think this was very methodical from Bill Mott. And I think Scylla, now that he's turned her back, he might have found what she's best at here. This 7 furlongs seems to kind of hit her right between the eyes. I know she has to turn the tables on Society, but on that quick turnaround last time, I think it's fair to argue that she might not have been at her absolute best. And I'm hoping we see her best coming up on Saturday. So Ways and Means, again, she's going to be tough for me to pick against just because a lot of her figures really do stand out. But I think Scylla is the horse you might get a little bit of a better price on. She's run well over the track already, although it wasn't a victory. And I think that time in between is what makes a difference for her.
Nice. I like the 10-1 there as well. I was actually interested in another price in this race as well myself. I thought if you go to the 2-horse here, One Magic Filly, this is one, I mean, it just strikes you like sort of sky's the limit with this one. You know, we haven't seen much of her. You go back to her maiden win, you click on the date and chart there. The horse that she beat came back. You could click there within the chart. You could see that horse came back to win by 5 lengths next out. So that's always cool to see. And I actually love clicking around here like this. It makes it so easy when you're looking for, next out winners and that sort of thing. Pretty easy to do it here within Race Lens. And, facing winners for the first time in her next start, you look at One Magic Filly, she wins but by a good margin. She posed the race best 112 Equibase speed figure when it's circled there in green. That means that's not only the best number for her, but that's the best number of any horse in this race. So I thought that was good. And then in her most recent, she stepped up and she actually beat older horses in the Chillingsworth. So it was a smaller field, but I mean, at least showed the ability to beat older horses. And if you go to the True Odds page, it does have her as what looks like. I mean, I don't know that I necessarily think she's going to be clear cut, but I think with the rail draw with her speed, she could very well, get to the front. And I think that's where you want to be at Del Mar, especially. I mean, I think we've seen year after year to the point where it's almost become comical, right? Like within a few races, everyone's like speed bias at the Breeders' Cup, whether it's Santa Anita or Del Mar or wherever really. But at Del Mar, we saw over the summer, obviously speed on the dirt, played pretty well. You combine it with the Breeders' Cup day where speed on the dirt is going to be good, at least earlier in the day. I think that's where you want to be. And I think One Magic Filly, I'd be shocked if she doesn't hit the board. I think she's gonna be there for an awfully long time. And then just one other quick mention: the 8-horse Soul of an Angel romped in her first try, going 7 furlongs last out. She looked great at a mile too, winning the Ruffian. Late pace number for her on the True Odds page has her at 129. And so how good is 129 in this race? Well, you just heard Christina make the case for Ways and Means. She's going to be the clear-cut favorite. Ways and Means checks in well below that 129 at 118. So I think the challenge for Soul of an Angel is going to be making up late ground. I think she's going to be way, way back, and she's going to have to, sort of pass horses late. That could be challenging at this distance over this track, but I think she'll be a pretty nice price. So if you're looking for a horse to round out your exotics, I think Soul of an Angel could be that horse. So let's move on. And now we're at 23 minutes in. And at 23 minutes in, this is typically when we like to welcome in our guy, Scott Coles. Scott, thank you for waiting patiently. Tell us all about, the stage is yours. Tell us all about the Breeders' Cup.
How's it going, everybody? Yeah, so I don't know why I picked this for my optional. It's actually a really hard race, but they all kind of are on this day, which is the beauty of it. So I chose, the Turf Mile. And while we're waiting for it to spin up, I kind of was playing with some angles. So the angle I came up with was Del Mar Turf, and it's the first time in North America, thinking that sometimes the California, or even you can even find this at Gulfstream sometimes too, where it's just like the warmer weather turf courses kind of throw the Europeans off a little bit. It's more of a recency bias probably than I'd like it to be for like a perfect angle where I would just toss these horses automatically. But over the last year, 1 for 24, you've seen some short prices burn money. I'm hoping we can kind of continue that. It applies to 3 of the horses in here. We don't have to really discuss them, but if you create this angle in Race Lens, it'll light up red for you. So that kind of just eliminated the 1 who's going to be a fairly short price. The 3 and the 11 are all fitting this angle, so I tried to kind of eliminate that way. Again, if you don't have another reason, I wouldn't eliminate solely off this, but if you were kind of on the fence and maybe this pushes you over the edge, I respect the 6 and the 7. but I'm really going to try to get out here with U.S. horses, which could be dangerous. I mean, but Carl Spackler has just done everything right this year, and More Than Looks, I feel like, got a late start this year, and I feel like there's more to the horse. So if you sort by late pace, which Craig's already done here, you've got More Than Looks has the highest late pace in the race. Now, the only issue is that the other thing in Route Race Lens is that there's only one horse with early speed tendencies, it says on the bottom there, so tread carefully backing a horse near the back. Now, the caveat to that is that if you look at the running styles, there's 5 U's in the race, which you kind of have to do your own research on something like that because a lot of these are tricky to find their running style. You have to kind of scour YouTube or talk to Christina or about how these horses run when she's had breakfast with them and just kind of like figure it out from there. But you need to find out if there's others that are going to be making like a pace case. Now, I feel like I have kind of like the best of both worlds with these two, whereas if there isn't a whole lot of pace, Carl Spackler can sit on or off the lead, has kind of showed that many times this year, and has shown the ability to continue to finish, has had some things, kind of had some things their own way, but been pretty consistent. And I've been really happy, especially at this distance. And then I've got More Than Looks, who's going to be a big price. But if you kind of look at that, they thought highly enough of this horse to put, they were in it last year. Sorry, I'm trying to see the screen. Beaten 2 lengths and a kind of a blanket finish, but was like coming from way out of it. And you're trying to outfinish Master of the Seas from way out of it. And courses like that were up there, like Cossack Reed and Maj. I mean, it was just a very tough race, but has since gotten much better. Yes, lost to Carl Spackler both times, but if you actually dive into those paces, they were not very fast. I know I'm making a knock against my own horse, but Carl Spackler had things more their own way than More Than Looks. However, you could see that same scenario again. So I really want both scenarios covered, and I want if they don't go fast early, I think Carl Spackler's got a great chance to, do what they've been doing all year. And if not, I feel like More Than Looks is going to be coming late and is fresh, is kind of only raced 3 times this year and is getting good at the end of the 4-year-old season, where a lot of horses continue to grow. And I just feel like you could see the all-time best. And if there's any pace whatsoever, you could see the possibility of a big price, at least hitting the board, if not winning. So that's kind of where I went there. But there's a lot of options here.
Yeah, this is a tough race. I mean, like you said, they all are, and they're all super competitive. The one race where I think there's some consensus that there's one horse who should win, and maybe it's not as tough a race, although I will have a counter argument to this here shortly, is this Breeders' Cup Distaff. So your standout, of course, is that horse Torpedo Anna. Christina, tell us why Torpedo Anna will either win by 20 or not win this race.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are a little worried and wondering if she's kind of coming down a little bit off her speed figures, if she ran so hard in the Travers that maybe we're not seeing her best. But I am of the other opinion. I know she's had 6 weeks in between. I've watched her train. I think she's obviously the best 3-year-old filly in the country. And when Idiomatic scratched earlier this week, the race was infinitely more in her hands. I mean, this is now her race to lose. I did just take a look at the late pace figures out of curiosity, because she is a horse that makes her own trip. She's tactical enough to be up there on the lead if she needs to be. I think she's more comfortable stalking and coming from just off of it. But then I was curious to see kind of where those late pace figures stacked up. So Sugarfish is the horse that actually finishes her races really well. And I think that's noteworthy if you're starting to play any kind of exactas, trifectas, that sort of thing. But Torpedo Anna is right there, and the two of them pretty significantly in favor of the rest of the field. The only horse I was kind of disappointed not to actually see Musical Mischief enter in the race. I was looking at her. Raging Sea, if you're looking for an older horse, I think is the one. But Awesome Result from Japan, I think we have to give her some attention. For one thing, she's undefeated. She's 7 for 7. And I've watched her train on the breakfast show this week. She's a daughter of Justify. She is as classy as they come. She has a beautiful stride. She floats over the racetrack out there. Her trainer is very, very accomplished. He's won the Japanese Triple Crown. I think if you look at her last race, and you can find it on YouTube, it's called the Breeders' Gold Cup. was at 1.25 miles, first of all. So unlike many of these horses in the field, she's backing up in distance to the 1.125 for the Breeders' Cup Distaff. She took over while turning. It was one of those kind of, not to go so far, but like the Arazi, the Beholder move around the turn where they just absolutely circle their competition. I don't know who she was facing, but to do that and to win so easily and to be a perfect 7 for 7, I think you have to pay attention to Awesome Results. She's also ridden by Yutakataki. He is 55 years old. He's the Mike Smith. He's the Johnny V. He's the Frankie Dettori of Japan. Absolute rock star. If he's coming out to ride her, I think he gives her a big chance in here. So I will include Awesome Result on tickets. I will include Raging Sea on tickets, but ultimately it is Torpedo Anna for me on top. I'm not worried about that potential downturn in her performances.
Yeah, it sort of feels like just people reaching for anything there. I don't know, whatever. I'm going to make a case for a horse to beat her, but that doesn't mean I don't think that she's still not going to run a massive race. Scott, back to you. Torpedo Anna.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. I mean, unless something's horribly wrong, I just feel like she should dominate here. And like Christina said, without Idiomatic, I mean, I just don't know what's stopping that. Like my first reaction after watching that Parks race was that she just wasn't cranked and like had it measured and just is out there just kind of for a paid workout, but and a pretty good paycheck for a workout. However, I mean, like McPeak has since backed up that narrative and is pushing that narrative that wasn't cranked and just thought she went on her own, and she did, probably closer than they'd like. But I mean, unless he's lying about that, then you could see something wild happen in this race. But other than that, I just don't see it. I mean, if you go to we've already just kind of covered the True Odds stuff there with the late pace and the make your own trip and the pace. I just think there's just not a whole lot that I could do to knock this horse. My only fear is that 4 to 5 is not even what you're going to get. I just don't know how short it's going to be. And that's where it gets tricky. And from a betting perspective for me, especially in like a mythical contest or anything like that you're playing, that your return is going to be so low that it's probably going to be worth playing against. But as far as kind of just singling and horizontal, betting structure and betting tickets, I just don't think I'm going to waste any money, or hopefully not, doing anything else. So that's just where I'm at from a playing contest versus cash kind of thing. But yeah, she just seems so much better in this field.
Yeah, I mean, an exacta is a possibility. I mean, especially if you like the horse that Corey likes, 5 horse. Corey, tell us more.
Yeah, look, everybody's covered it in here. Let's just stop. Torpedo Anna's the best horse in this field. Okay? We're dancing around trying to make up something here, right? But if you're going to try to figure out how you do anything, unless you just want to keep your money in your pocket, in this race, I looked at, say, who could possibly, compete, who is got maybe California experience, and I said, okay, let's find some angles. Well, Torpedo Anna, Kenny McPeak is 0 for 8 all time at Del Mar, 7 times out of the money. Okay, so there's if you're looking for something, there's one. Okay, I mean, sure, we'll go with that. I mean, the last race for Sugarfish was career best 112 equibase speed figure, same as Torpedo Anna's last race, and also career best. So got numbers that can compete. Definitely on the improve. I don't like the 0 for 2 at Del Mar angle, but that's this horse is definitely improved over the course of his career. I think it can sit wherever and can finish up well. And that final half a furlong was pretty good acceleration in the last race. So I think maybe this horse can finish up better than the rest and kind of come up there and maybe catch him napping. I don't know, but if you look at Sugarfish, ran in a maiden claiming race last February. You don't see a lot of those at the Breeders' Cup the same year, right? There have been 14 North American horses all time that ran in a maiden claiming race before competing in the Distaff. Only Jewel Princess won in 1996 for Wally Delassie. So they don't win often when they come out of maiden claiming in the Breeders' Cup Distaff races. So I'm just giving you all the facts today. But Mullins and Tyler, I love it. They're 29% together in 2024 since the start of this year. Mullins is winning at 32% this year at this distance and surface. Unfortunately, he's 0 for 10 in the Breeders' Cup all time, so he's going to have to break that streak to win. So from an Ohio bred to win the juvenile to Mullins to spring the huge upset in here. Let's look for streaks to be broken.
All right. Well, look, I'm going to tell people watching right now, hit pause, open up another tab, go to YouTube, and type in the words Nagata Keenan, Nagata Japan Grade 3 Stakes 2024. Watch that race. After that, type in Mermaid Stakes Kyoto, Japan. Watch that race. In each race, you will see a horse named Alice Verite open up a 15 to 20 length lead on the field. Now, the most recent race, she came back to them. In the race before, she held on. Race before, same thing, she held on. This horse is nuts. I love this horse. She's going to the front. It's clear. She's going. And I think what's going to happen is Torpedo Anna's, Brian Hernandez is going to be like, I'm not going after that horse. That horse is going to settle down the front. She's got a really smart jockey who's having a career year in Kyle Frey. I think if he settles her down a little bit and they could get into a good rhythm, I mean, she's a horse who could do this. She could make this distance. I mean, there's no question. And so, look, I don't know about her quality. Like that Mermaid Stakes that I mentioned was a Group 3 race. She wasn't really competitive at the Group 2 level. So, I don't know that she belongs here on class and ability, but a lot of times speed can make up for what's lacking there in overall, class and talent, especially if the track is playing to horses on the front end. And look, I think Torpedo Anna, even if she's 70%, probably catches her. But my mindset is, why not take a swing at an exact? Alice Verite is going to be 50 or 60 to 1. And if you think Torpedo Anna is going to be there, like all of us do, can envision a situation in which she's any worse than second. To me, Alice Verite is actually the 4 horse. I may have said the 1 horse. Alice Verite, the 4 horse. Play your 2-4, 4-2 exactas. This horse has run 20 times. Has only been out of the money 6 times in those 20 races. So the horse shows up to play, and she's nuts, and I love her. So we're going with Alice Verite in the distaff as a potential price play. Were any of you going to mention Alice Verite? You decided not to?
Oh, I just had a question. Have you seen any of the dirt works? Because the horse has never been on dirt.
Oh, I'm not worried about that at all. She's got 4 legs. She's got speed.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, the speed's the speed will show up. I just was curious if you have any like on the ground info that she's working well in the dirt.
Me or Christina?
I'm gonna have to go back.
Anyone?
No, I think we've seen her once on the breakfast show, if I remember correctly. So I'm gonna have to go back and pull that. But the one thing I'm gonna say though is, so you mentioned the last race, the Nagata Keenan, that was terrible, right? She ends up 10th, beating 8 lengths that day. But here's the thing about Japanese racing. It's so hot that they take the summer off. And I listened to a recent podcast with Kate Hunter on it. And Kate Hunter is sort of the liaison for all of the Japanese horses here in the U.S. And she made the point, and she said it several times, to say, don't worry about the last race you see for all of these Japanese horses coming into the Breeders' Cup. Because for us, we're all pointing towards the end of the year. We're counting to the end of the year. That last race, you want to be, coming into the Breeders' Cup in good form. For the Japanese, it's the opposite. They're just getting started. And I think if you look through the Japanese horses that we have this year, so many of them, that last race is A, not good, B, not their ideal distance, C, 3 months ago. I mean, it's completely a prep. And so I think you can give her a pass for that last poor race. And if you do, then look at the rest of her form. She's never worse than first or second in her last 6 starts.
Yeah, look, she opened up I watched that race, obviously. She opened up like a silly lead, and then I mean, look, she just got tired, right? They caught her. They kind of swarmed her late. I mean, she was there for a good long way, and they kind of swarmed her late. So there's that what you just pointed out, I think is super interesting, and it could be one of the reasons why, back in what was it, 21, that Marsh Lorraine won this race from Japan. I mean, totally overlooked. But this is the reverse, right? This is that was just so much speed. There was a pace meltdown, and Marsh Lorraine closed. I think this is going to be the complete opposite. I don't see any speed in this race. I mean, other than Tordjman, I mean, who's going to the lead?
You might get 90 to 1 too.
Yeah. No, I think this is if you're going to take a stab and think that a horse, especially the track's playing to speed, and you'll know by race 7. Follow me on this one. Trust me, people. This is it. This is the one. This is the one this weekend.
I like it.
I mean, it's the only one. It's the only one you'll need. It will be the only one you will need.
That's your weekend maker there, Dan.
Yeah, that is.
Let's hope so. Fingers crossed. All right, let's go to the classic. This is the big one. It's race 8. This is an awesome race. I mean, this is a spectacular race. I had a hard time splitting them. You got, the best horse from Europe coming in. You got, Forever Young, who obviously we saw earlier this year, who's a standout. And then you've got the best 3-year-old American horse in Fierceness, just loaded field. And then you've got a bunch of other horses in the mix. Christina, tell us what your process was in trying to start weeding out some of these horses, because they all seem pretty even.
My process kept leading me to a new horse. That's the problem. But when I started with Racelands, my process kept taking me back to Newgate, which I didn't expect. Mm-hmm. I was never going to pick Newgate in this race. I didn't like him at all going into the California Crown last time out. He was 3rd by a head. It was a pretty exciting race. 3 of them dueling on the wire there. Substanador has an injury. He will not be competing. Same for National Treasure, who was in the dirt mile. He's not going to be competing. But Newgate, not only has he really touted himself in the morning today, if you actually want to go back and look at, we're recording this on, gosh, what day is it, guys? Is it Tuesday? This is what Breeders' Cup Week does to me. Yeah, today, Tuesday. If you want to go back and look at the breakfast show from Tuesday, you'll see some footage of Newgate. He looks phenomenal. He trained so well going into the California Crown. He ran very well that day. He earned a career best Equibase speed figure. As you can see, it's highlighted there in green, that 122. He's come back to work really well since then. Also highest at the distance and surface for a horse, so that pushes you in his direction. And then look, Bob Baffert, every stat you pull on him is going to be strong. So I tried to filter this as precise and with a high degree of difficulty, because you want to end up, finding exactly, is this as good as, it seemingly can be on paper. So I went with Bob Baffert for the last 5 years at the exact distance that we're competing in the Classic on the dirt in grade 1 stakes only. And you're getting a very high 30% from his barn. So look, he's got the right trainer behind him. He's a horse that has always had a lot of talent. He's 3 for 11 lifetime. He's on the board in 5 others. He was precocious. He's a winner at 1.25 miles with that big cap. I'm not sure who he beat that day, but I think Newgate, numbers-wise, I feel like I'm really being pushed in his direction. I did want to talk about 2 other horses, though. One of them is Ushba Tesoro. This is the other horse that I kind of can't get away from. I know that a lot of us are leaning in the direction of Forever Young as far as the Japanese horses go, but Ushba Tesoro has done nothing wrong himself. I mean, he was 2nd in his prep race last time out. You can see 2 starts back, 2nd to Laurel River in the Dubai World Cup, 2nd in the Saudi Cup. And I know we're talking about a lot of seconds here, but all of those speed figures, the Equibase figures, if you're looking at Thorograph, those are all really, really competitive with some of the shorter priced horses in this race. And a lot of the horses that we're really focusing on are 3-year-olds. And I think there is something to these older horses that are in good form. He's a total professional. He's 11 for 35 lifetime, has earned over $16 million. Ushba Tesoro will be on all of my tickets. And we've had a couple of Japanese media members on our show. And when they start ranking who of the Japanese horses has the best chance to win, they're all putting Ushba Tesoro at the top. They're talking about Forever Young. They're talking about American Bikini, but they all lean really heavily in his direction. And then the last horse, I think the question for everybody is City of Troy. I know he's the morning line favorite. I'm not sure if he's going to be the favorite at post time. He did look pretty good galloping over the dirt today, but the analogy that I've used this whole week to talk about him, and the reason why I think you can fade him if he is a really short price, is I think when some horses accelerate, all horses, when they accelerate, they either accelerate by lengthening their stride or they accelerate with a turnover and a faster stride. In general, turf horses lengthen, dirt horses turn over. and he lengthens. His stride is massive, and the way he accelerates is by opening that stride up, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. But those horses don't grip the dirt, and I think they lose some confidence when they don't really feel the ground underneath them a little bit. So I'm personally of the camp that thinks he's not going to like the dirt. I could be eating my words at some point, but I am going to play against him. Ushpatasura will be a horse that I use. Fierceness, I'm willing to give a chance to. And then the numbers and Racelands keeps pushing me towards Newgate in here.
Christina, I'm glad to hear that you had no concerns about Alice Verite gripping the dirt and that you're fully confident that she will.
I need to watch her stride. Hold for that. I'll let you know if she's a turnover or lengthener.
All right, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed there. Look, when you like a 20-1 shot, I get excited. But then when I look down the sheet and I see Corey's pick in this race, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I did not know Christina was going to pick that. And when I did my handicapping, I did not even look. And so I kept coming back to this horse because I really had followed the horse going into, Newgate going into the California Crown because I was doing the pod that week. And I looked at it, I said, this horse has a right to need one. And almost didn't need one. Look, just ran the race of his career coming off of that long layoff from Dubai back from March to September in the California Crown and still posted the 122. So if you watch the race, the horse was hard held kind of throughout and made that wide run on the turn and just gobbled up ground and had every right to not have it at the very end, to just not get past the stablemate and Subsanador, but will be ready to go this week after coming out of that race. And now that Christina has given the training well thumbs up, I like that too. Has run over this and won over the Del Mar surface, which is always important. I do look at, Frankie Dettori getting back on board that horse. And so I look at Baffert and Dettori are 31% together over the dirt all time and 12 of 16 in the money. Okay. And this is 20-1 shot. And when you look at the classic, you can make some money just hitting the board at 20-1. Dettori's won aboard this horse, so it doesn't scare me at all. I also have a couple of interesting ones because, of course, I'm the workout guy here. The 58-4 bullet work on Saturday is fast, even for Baffert standards at this level, at this distance. Of 41, Pramana stat lines, here we go. Of 41 final 5 furlong works over the Santa Anita track for a 1.25 mile stakes runner, the 58-4 is Baffert's fastest since 2011. He's only posted 2 faster works of those conditions ever, both in 1999. One was Silver Charm and the other was Real Quiet. So those horses were decent.
No way.
Seriously?
Those horses were decent. So here, I'm bringing some deep stuff here. So this horse is clearly working well. All right. And then I looked at the breeding again. Okay. Once you get to this level, you don't usually have to look at the breeding. But I decided to kind of just look into that nicking. And of course, this horse Newgate is, it's by Into Mischief and out of a Majestic Warrior mare. There have been 3 foals with that breeding to hit the track. Newgate, obviously, is running 8 graded stakes, 30% win rate. Denim and Pearls, nice horse, same dam as Newgate, 3 graded stakes, winner of 3 of 7 races, 43% win rate. And Mischiefful, out of a different dam, 2 of 5, 40% win rate, 4 of 5 in the money. Keep that nicking in your back pocket when you look at horses. You're going to want that Into Mischief out of a Majestic Warrior mare. So interesting stuff to look at all down the line. But I went with Newgate at 20-1. I think he's going to run a huge race. And of course, everybody else is on Forever Young, and I'm going to just follow suit with that as well. The trainer, Yoshito Yahagi, is 2 for 2 lifetime at Del Mar. He won that Breeders' Cup Distaff and the Filly Mare Turf in 2021. That run in the Kentucky Derby was just, and it was awesome, but he had that rough trip in the lane, probably likely wins with a better trip there. And since 1991, Post 1 has the second most victories at 1.25 miles on dirt at Del Mar. So his position doesn't scare me either. So Forever Young, Newgate, and I'm going to pass on City of Troy. Aidan O'Brien wins everywhere in North America all the time. You see him everywhere, but at Del Mar he's just 2 for 20 all time. So I'm gonna let him beat me.
All right. Well, if people watching thought it was crazy that you and Christina picked the same 20-1 horse, we're gonna love to hear who Scott has in his top 3 in this race. You're on mute, Scott. I think we've got you muted here still.
Sorry, first time here. So yeah, I do like everything you guys said about Newgate, and it makes me even more confident. I landed on Forever Young. I think if you look at the PPs, and if you talk about the body of work, right, you go back to that at Derby, and if he isn't, I mean, a lot of them had a terrible start, overcame it, got in fine position, and then was just getting bumped after bump, into the almost into the rail. I mean, by Sierra Leone. That doesn't happen. We're talking about a Derby winner. We're talking about an undefeated horse, and we're talking about the favorite. So like you just put that in your mind of what should have happened. And there's a lot of people you can say that about in their career. But I mean, to put that in perspective, I feel like if you get a decent price in this horse, it's great value. I feel like I watched that. It's hard to find a great replay of that Japan Dirt Classic, but I have to look again. But the track comments and by watching the race myself, I mean, the horse was right up near the front, which is what I want to see versus was kind of like a victim of the break and the huge field in the Derby more so as that's the actual horse's running style. It's more of a stalk and pounce type horse and even pressed, almost borderline pressed in that Japan race. Just really hard to make a pace figure for that race to kind of know was he pressing because it was so slow, but ran up front the whole time, had a ton of finish, had to hold off the closers. Go find the replay on YouTube after you watch all Dan's, and it's just I couldn't help it. There's
Nagata Keenan.
Solid. Are you getting paid or like what? So yeah, now if we go over to the true odds screen and and kind of talk about the race projection again. It's another one of these where you're going to see that they're kind of warning you that the race is slow. So where they have Forever Young, I'm really hoping doesn't play out. I think this is kind of, you can only do so much with a computer simulation, but you're not kind of accounting for some of those overseas races. So I think the horse will be much closer than this, breaking from the one. I think we'll get a good spot right behind the first flight, hopefully not too far away. And I just feel like pretty fresh horse, kind of just second up off a break from the Derby. I mean, these are prime spots for 3-year-olds to improve. And I just feel like if the horse is sitting on his best race, you could see something pretty competitive, if not best out there. I've also, Fierceness, my old friend, who just let me down so bad in the Derby and then comes back and I try to play the pattern of he only wins every other race and then beats me again. And then I only won one of the 3. So, still a fan, still think the horse is super talented, terrified as the one that's going to happen again, or if they finally figured it out. You never know what you're going to get, but the A game of Fierceness is always a competitor in any race. And then Newgate, I mean, you guys covered so much that I'm not going to, bore everyone with more angles, but I mean, the highest late pace is with Bob Baffert in California. I mean, how can you count that out? You can't leave that off your ticket. I don't know that you're going to get 20-1. I've heard a lot of buzz so far, but ways to go in this race that you're going to get a price, right? I just don't know how big it's going to be, but if we don't get any scratches, it's going to be very interesting because you kind of have fans of multiple countries coming together and where the money's going to come from. It's going to be interesting to see what the prices are in here because it's a very, very competitive race, but I'm excited to watch it. A couple other I'll mention. Sierra Leone has proven pretty useful underneath all year if you want to kind of build tries and supers. And then you got City of Troy, the whole dirt. I mean, Christina explained it already. It's just, it's a mystery. You're making the morning line favorite off of a bunch of grass races. I mean, at least with Dan's horses, I'm getting 99-1. I'm not taking 5-2 on a grass horse. I don't know. So we'll see. I'm going to need to do more digging there, but it's just a tough spot to convince me that I want to bet a ton of money on a horse that it's a question to run on the actual surface that they're running on. I mean, it kind of bothers me but I don't know that he's actually going to be the favorite.
Well, the other thing is City of Troy is also 3 years old. And I did want to bring this up. And I know there's been some love. Scott, obviously you talked about Fierceness and obviously your top pick Forever Young as well. In the past 23 years, 17 of the classic winners have been 4 or 5 years old. And amongst the 3-year-olds who have won have been like Curlin, American Pharaoh, Arrogate, right? You've got to be almost like a generational talent to win this race as a 3-year-old. And like, I don't know, maybe Forever Young could be, right? Maybe City of Troy is. Does that Did that factor into, I wonder, the handicap? I mean, you both picked Newgate, who's older, and has got some experience. Obviously Grade 1 experience recently. Did that factor into anyone's handicapping? Sort of the age, the 3-year-old in the Classic.
A little bit.
I mean, for me a little bit.
Yeah. It gives you pause.
I would say just like the disappointing is that we don't see so many of these horses at 4 anymore. So, you have some of them that have stuck around, and maybe they weren't the most brilliant when they were 3, which is why they stuck around. But it's disappointing that we don't have, like the Gun Runner that turned 4 and became this incredible horse at 4 years old. That's what these breeding decisions, I think, have done. I think you might see that stat swing a little bit more in the direction of the 3-year-olds as the breeding industry continues to sort of dominate those decisions.
I mean, you even have like a horse like Justify that just didn't even run. They retired before they even ran. Couldn't even run in the Breeders' Cup. I mean, there's just, it's tough out there with all of that. I would have loved nothing more than see some of those horses, especially American Pharoah, my all-time favorite, run at 4. But I mean, it's just the industry we're in, unfortunately.
So I'm going to give you a couple of picks. I mean, Christina touched on this. I don't know like what it is about the Japanese horses, but like this is the year I'm going all in, like Ushba Tesoro. So just a quick story. So with America's Best Racing, we've got a really sort of small team, and we try to churn out as much content as we can and cover as much ground as possible when we're at the races. And so we got lucky, last year we were with Mage's team. We captured them winning the Kentucky Derby. It was great. We got lucky. We were with Jet Antonucci at the Belmont Stakes. Arcangelo wins. We capture that. So we're riding this hot streak. We go into the Breeders' Cup last year, and it's like, all right, Dan, which horse are we going to be with? We only got 2 cameras to go around. What are we going to do? It's like Ushba Tesoro. This is the horse. We're gonna stay hot. And so we go, and then of course the horse like just gets. I mean, didn't really get crushed out of the break, but just sort of got shuffled, took a lot of dirt, didn't want to, and was out of the Classic within a quarter mile. We had a mic on the assistant to the owner, and he in Japanese says, and we interpreted it later. He says, essentially, "Oh crap! What are we gonna do now?" This is like 3 seconds out of the gate. So it's a good thing I didn't actually understand what he said in the moment, because I was holding a bunch of tickets and we're also had the cameras on them. So anyway, but the horse lost all chance at the break. And for people who don't know the horse's running style, it seems like he doesn't need to be, on or near the pace. He's usually, though, like a mid-pack horse and likes to be in the clear. And then he just makes this sort of, long, slow, grinding run at the end. And I think, when you look at this horse, you've got Arthur's Ride, who we know has got a decent bit of speed. You have Highland Falls, who was kind of right on Arthur's Ride, but throughout the Jockey Club Gold Cup, and ultimately Arthur's Ride faded there. And you've got a few others. Mixto's got speed. I think the pace is going to be honest here. I think you want a mid-pack horse. And Ushba Tesoro, time after time, is just super consistent. He's a 3-time Group 1 winner. Just missed in the Saudi Cup by a head earlier this year. If we look at the True Odds page, it does project the pace to be a little bit slow. The only need the lead type is Arthur's Ride. But as I said, you have a bunch of these horses. If you look, all those E's and P's, like those are horses that are going to get in the mix. I mean, that's really their only shot, is being up close, staying within range. And so I think it really sets up Ushba Tesoro. And then, I'm completely blanking at Derma Sotogake, right? Last year, like no one had Derma Sotogake finishing second last year. And that was just, I don't know. Like if the horse, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what race he came out of that kind of made him. Let me see.
I think he had been off forever, hadn't it?
He'd been off that whole time. Okay, yeah. I'm trying to remember like what. So maybe I don't know. Maybe that's to Christina's point about like the that's sort of a start of the season for them, and maybe he was just fully cranked for that, and he just came in totally fresh. But like to me, Ushba Tesoro has been the better horse and is the better horse. And if that horse could finish second last year, and you could argue this year's Classic field is much stronger, but I mean, if that horse finished second last year, and Ushba Tesoro finished 5th last year, not having things his own way at all. I think if he gets things a little more his way, and if the pace sets up the way I'm envisioning it, I think he could. I could see Ushba sort of winning this race, like pulling away, like 5 or 6 lengths in the end. Like I really think he's that good. So I'm Ushba Zora with Scott as well, and Forever Young. I like Forever Young for all the reasons you stated. The only thing is, I was just like, the 3-year-old thing. He's done a good bit of travel. Like I'm gonna, maybe that takes something out of him. 1.25 miles. Maybe that's sort of the outer limit of what he can do, right? We saw him in the Derby. Granted, he was the victim of a lot of bouncing around, but he's going to probably, from the one hole, he's going to probably have to navigate some sort of trip at some point. And so, I think it's a lot to overcome for a 3-year-old, but I think he'll be right there. And then my only price play here was the 8-horse Pyrenees. So horse with back-to-back runner-ups in Grade 1 races. I think, 1.25 miles again, sort of outer limits of what this horse can do probably. But we've seen this horse get better throughout the year. And I think he could grind his way up for an in-the-money finish. I think could finish 3rd. I think this was probably better over a wet track. And fingers crossed, there is no rain. But we are, supposed to be overcast. And, if everything goes to hell, there might be rain, and we don't want to think about that doomsday scenario. But if there is, keep Pyrenees in mind. So, all right. Well, we've covered a lot. We're right at an hour, and I promised Christina that that's what we'd shoot for. You proud of me, Christina?
Can we go watch the World Series now?
All right, let's go watch the World Series. All right. Good luck to everyone who's watched this. Of course, we've been watching Race Lens, handicapping the Breeders' Cup. I want to remind you briefly of just the promo that's available right now. You get 30% off all Equibase products and Raceland subscriptions using that promo code at the bottom of your screen. For Corey Patton, for Scott Coles, for Christina Blacker, I'm Dan Tordjman. Happy Breeders' Cup!